So we're going to go ahead and start with 2.3. And in 2.3, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with line equations. And we're going to be trying to come up with the equations of these lines. And there are three different ways we can come up with equations. We can use 2 points, we can use a point and a slope, or we can use a point and another line equation. Before we do that, though, we need to make sure that we know how to write our answer. And there are two ways that we can write our answer. We can either write our answer in standard form or slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is the one that we're already familiar with. We did this right before break. And this again is slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So for slope-intercept form, all you have to do is solve it for y. That's easy enough. Solve it for y, and that gives you the slope-intercept form. The other one that we use once in a while, it's used more for systems of equations and in college algebra, is what's called standard form. And in standard form, you've got ax plus by equals c. These are capital letters, and since they're capital letters, that means they have to be integers. So no fractions or decimals. And also, a must be positive. So a, the number in front of the x, has to be positive. So let's work with a few of these. We're not going to work with slope-intercept form much because we've already done it, and we'll do it when we work out the questions. Standard form is sometimes where students struggle a bit, is to write equations in standard form. So let's just write these in standard form. How about 3/5 x equals 2y plus 9. Okay, so I want you to write this in standard form. Well, when we talk about standard form, we can't have fractions and we can't have decimals. So we've got fractions here. So first things first, clear the fractions out. So multiply everything now by a 5, because that will clear out all of your fractions. So multiply it all by 5. That's going to get rid of the fractions here. Standard form, you cannot have fractions. So those have to go first. 5's cancel. That leaves you with a 3x equals now 5 times 2 is a 10y. 5 times 9 is a 45. Okay? Now we can easily get it in standard form. When we look at standard form, no fractions or decimals. Those are taken care of. And notice the x and the y have to be on the left with the x first. Then we simply just move that 10y over. And now we've got 3x minus 10y equals 45. And that is in standard form. How do I know that it is in standard form? Well, do we have any fractions or decimals? No. Is the x listed first? Yes. Then followed by the y, equal sign, constants or numbers on the other side. Also make sure that your x is positive. That 3 is a positive. That means we're okay. If it was a negative, we would have to change all the signs. In this case, it was positive, So it's already in standard form there. Let's do another one. Okay, let's go ahead and get this one in standard form. Well, standard form, again, we cannot have fractions. So first things first, we'll clear out the fractions by, again, multiplying it all by 5. I should have chose a different fraction, but that's okay. We used 5 before, we use 5 again. So multiply everything by the 5 there. And that leaves me then with 15y equals, those cancel, x, and 5 times 2 makes it 10. Now, I made this one a little bit different because this one's going to require one extra step. We move that x over, bless you, and then we have a minus x plus 15y equals 10. We are not completely done, and this is where students a lot of times make a mistake. We're 90% done, but what can we not have? Well, we cannot have fractions or decimals. They're gone. But that x has to be positive. And right now, that x is negative. So we need to make sure it becomes positive. And the way we do that is we just change all of our signs. So we just distribute a negative through. And that's going to change all of my signs because the x has to be positive. Y can be whatever it needs to be. Same thing with the number on the end. But the x part has to be positive. So that makes it then x minus 15y equals minus 10. And that is now in standard form. Since the x is positive. Okay, so the x is positive, so that is now in standard form. Okay, so what we're now going to look at is we're going to look today at how to find the equation of a line when you are given a point and you're given a slope. I don't think we'll have time for the others. We'll do those next week. But we're going to look now today at how to find the equation of a line when you're given a point and a slope. Now, the easiest way to do these is to use a flow chart. So I'm going to write up a flow chart, and we're going to talk about how this flow chart works. So the first thing we want to start off with is what we're trying to do. And we want to find the equation of a line given a point and a slope. We might have time to do the one for 2 points, but we'll just see how much time we have. If we have time to do that one as well, then we'll do that one also. We'll at least get through the one where I give you a point and a slope. So we want to find the equation of a line when you're given a point and a slope. Now, what we need to then do, and each of these are a little bit different, is we're going to use this new formula. And this new formula is what's called the point-slope formula. So we're going to use the point-slope formula. And that is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And there's different ways of doing these. I think this is the absolute easiest, is to just use the point-slope formula. Now, once we've got it in the point-slope formula, then we have to see how we want to express our answer. And we can either express our answer in standard, or we can express our answer in slope-intercept form. So let's write out what slope-intercept form looks like. Slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. So there's one way that you could write your answer. And the question will specifically tell you either you write it in slope-intercept form or you write it in standard form, one or the other. And standard form is ax plus by equals c. So you'll either write it in one or the other. Okay, so we kind of zoom out so you can see the entire flow chart here. So this is what we're doing. We're going to find the equation of a line, and you're going to be given a point and a slope. This one, there's not a lot to do. You take your point, you take your slope, you put them in point-slope formula, and then you either solve it for y and get the slope-intercept form, or if it asks for it, get the x and the y on the same side and get standard form. And next week I'll make copies that have all three flow charts in it. We're just going over probably this one and the next one today. But next week I'll bring you a packet where it's already wrote up, so you won't have to worry about copying them down. So let's do two of these, and then we'll see how much time we have left. We'll do one in standard form, and we'll do one in slope-intercept form. Let's go ahead now and find the equation in standard form. And here's what you're given. You're given a point, so let's say -5, 2, and you're given a slope of, let's say, -3/2. Okay, so there are three different ones of these. There's one for a point and a slope, which we're covering right now. There's one for 2 points, which we'll either get to today or next week. And there's one for a point and a line equation. So we first need to identify what we've got. What do we have? Point and a slope. So that means we use this flowchart. Okay? And it even says, find the equation of a line given a point and a slope. So what does it say to do? Yep, apply this point-slope formula. So we take our ordered pair and we label it. We label it the same way that we labeled them when they went in the midpoint formula or they went in the slope formula. So x1 and y1. Again, I always like to write out my formula so I have it so I can reference it. Go ahead and write up your point-slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Fill it in. Be very, very careful if you have a double negative. That is where students make a mistake. They make a mistake with the double negative. So use parentheses and be very, very careful of that. These are nothing but algebra, but it's easy to make a sign error. So fill it in. The y stays the same. Now, y1 is 2. So we have a minus that comes down. So that's going to be that minus 2 there. Equals m, which is a minus 3/2. X stays the same. Minus a minus 5. Commonly made mistake is right here with this double negative, because this double negative makes it then a positive. So be very careful with that. And now we're going to distribute through that 3/5. Oh, sorry, 3/2, negative 3/2. If you have trouble, just write it over the side. How do we distribute through? Well, the left-hand side stays the same, y minus 2. On the right-hand side, we've got a minus 3/2 x. Now, what about when we distribute through? Well, it helps. When you struggle with how to see it, right over the side, we've got a minus 3/2, and we're going to have to multiply it by a 5 over 1. It's a 5. Now, nothing cancels, so we have to multiply across, and that leaves you then with a minus 15 over 2. Okay, so we just distribute it through, and if you have trouble with the fractions, write them on the side. Multiply through, that way you don't struggle with it. If you can see it mentally, you can do that too. You just take minus 3 times 5, makes it that minus 15. What are we going into? Okay, we're going into standard form. If we're going into standard form, we cannot have fractions anymore. So that means we've got to multiply everything now by 2. Okay, so that leaves you then with 2y minus 4 equals minus 3x minus 15. All right with that. So we just cleared out our fractions. That's done. Now we want it in standard form. So what does standard form need to look like? Zoom out of it so we can maybe see them at the same time. Okay, so standard form looks like this. Okay? No fractions, no decimals. Fractions are gone. No decimals there. So we need to make sure that our x is on the left-hand side. So make sure x is on the left. Everything else, it's not a y, goes to the right. So make sure your x and your y are on the left. X goes first. So move that 3x over with addition. Add the 4 to move it over. That way we can get it all in standard form at once. So if I move everything over, the x goes first, so that's 3x. Then we've got a plus 2y. And on the right-hand side, we've got a minus 15 plus 4. And minus 15 plus 4 is a minus 11. Is that in standard form? Yes, it is. How do I know it's in standard form? Okay, no fractions, no decimals. X is on the left, y is on the left, and x is positive. Try one more like this, and then if we have time, which we might not, we'll look at what happens when we have 2 points. So one more. The next one's going to be in slope-intercept form. So the next one, we're going to find the equation. In slope-intercept form. And you're going to be given a point again. So minus 5, minus 8. And let's say you're given a slope of minus 3/7. Okay, so what are we going to first do? Well, First things first, we look at what we've got. What do we currently have? Point, slope. That means we go back to our flow chart. We have a point and a slope, so we use the point-slope formula. Which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And label your ordered pair, x1 and y1. And I picked this one with a lot of negatives just because we have to be super careful about the double negatives, because that is where students make the mistakes. Is they don't cancel out those double negatives. So make sure you take your time, fill it in, watch out for the double negatives, and take care of those if they're there. Now we've got y minus a minus 8. So there's the double negative right there. That is then going to equal a minus 3/7 times x minus a minus 5. Let's go ahead and get rid of the double negatives. So the double negative here makes that positive. The double negative here also makes that positive. And we're going to have to distribute through the negative 3/7. Let's go ahead and rewrite this as then y plus 8 equals, we'll distribute this through here. When you distribute through, we've got a minus 3/7 x. And we have a negative times a positive. That's going to make it a negative. If you struggle with the fractions, write them out over to the side. So if you struggle with multiplying, write it out. And what do we have? We have a minus 3/7, and we're going to have to multiply that by a 5/1. Nothing cancels. That makes it then a minus 15/7. Now we are working in slope-intercept form, so we can keep the fractions, but most of the time it's going to be advantageous just to clear them out. So let's go ahead and just clear out the fractions. That way we don't have to deal with them. I think it's easier because then you're not worried about the fractions. And students tend to panic when they see a fraction. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that right now. And the easiest way to do that is multiply it by a 7. Distribute that 7 through. And that's going to leave you then with 7y plus 56 equals a minus 3x and a minus 15. Make sure you got your signs done correctly. It's very, very easy to make a mistake, so always double check things. Now, what are we wanting to do? Get it in what form? We go back up and look and read our directions. You want it in slope-intercept. So go back to your flowchart if you need to. And what does it need to look like? It needs to look like this right here. So how do we do that? Well, we do that just by moving things around. So I'm going to go ahead and move this 56 over with subtraction. Now we've got 7y equals a minus 3x. 56 and 15. They're both negative, so it's a negative 71. We'll divide by our 7 everywhere. And now we've got y equaling a minus 3/7 x minus 71 over 7. Everyone all right with that so far? I want to look at one more thing real quick. Next week we'll talk about how to handle when you have 2 points and a point and a line equation. But let's look at how to find the equation when you're given the slope and the y-intercept. The quick and easy way to do that. So we're going to find the equation in the slope-intercept form. You're going to be given, let's say, m equals 7. And also you're going to be given a y-intercept. And let's say that y-intercept is 0, comma, -9. Now, if it's a y-intercept, you could work it out the same way as we did a moment ago, because the y-intercept is just a point. But you can just jump straight to the answer when you're given the y-intercept, because the y-intercept, remember, is your b. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right? Okay, now, this m, well, that's your slope. And this b, remember, that was the y-intercept. And it was 0, comma, b. Look at what we've got now. How would you write this equation? And we'll do 2 of these just to make sure we have this part down. And then we'll talk about what you can go through in your homework. So I can jump directly to my answer because I know my m is 7, so that's a 7x. And we've got the y-intercept. That's the part that we always have to find. Okay, now the y-intercept is 0, comma, b. Look at what we've got here. 0, comma, -9. So what is that -9 then? That -9 is like your b. So I can jump directly to my answer when you're given the y-intercept. And that would be then 7x. That represents your slope. Your y-intercept is 0, -9. So your b is -9. So your final answer then would be y equals 7x minus 9. Why? Because that's your y-intercept. So if they give you the y-intercept, it's actually going to be easier. Let's do one more. And this will be the last problem for today. So again, same directions. Find the equation in slope-intercept form. And let's say you're given a slope of -3/10, and you got a y-intercept of 0, comma, 2/5. Now, we could go ahead and use the point slope formula. And that would be fine, but we've got all these fractions. It would be a lot to clear out. I can skip directly to the answer because it's a y-intercept. So if it tells you it's the y-intercept, then you know this 2/5, that's going to be your b. And your slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right? You know all the different pieces now. So your answer would simply be then y equals minus 3/10 x plus 2/5. And that's it. If you are given the y-intercept, then you can avoid doing the point-slope formula, only if it says y-intercept. Let's now talk about our homework. And if you haven't turned your homework in from last week, make sure I get it today before you leave. If you're still working on it, you can turn it in next week. You just really don't want to get too far behind. So we're adding more. So just before you leave today sometime, bring up your homework if you're finished with it. You can turn it in next week and I'll still grade it, but you just do not want to get too far behind because it's easy to get far behind and hard to get caught up. So let's talk about our homework. So our homework, you should be able to do 2.1. You should be able to do them all. 2.2, you should be able to do them all. And 2.3, we can do a lot of them. 2.3, you should be able to do question 1, 2, 3. You can do 4. You plug the 0 in. Cannot do 5 yet. Can't do 6 yet. You can do 7. You can't do 8, 9, or 10 yet. We'll learn those next week. 11 and 12, we can't do those. 13, yeah, you can think about 13. We can go over that next week if we need to. 14, you should be able to do as well. That's an easier one. 15, 16, should be able to do. 17, you should be able to do. Yep, 18, 19. So you should also be able to do 15 through then 19. So you can do most of it. So you should be able to do, if you want to mark them, you should be able to do question 1, 2, 3, and 4. Skip 5. We'll do 5 and 6